Oh, thanks.
Okay.
Thank you.
Jeez, it's going to be a while.
Yeah, you're going to have to think of something entertaining with till I get this done.
All right.
Because I can't, thank you. Thank you. Yeah. Think of something to talk about.
Well, what we know takeoff's going to be on one of these. Somebody, what is it about takeoff? Who's got it? Who's takeoff? Tell me about takeoff. On a roller coaster, okay? You're on the wrong airplane if it's like a roller coaster because they're not supposed to descend after they start taking off. Yeah. Matter of fact, on an airplane, if we start to descend on takeoff, we get pull up. We get a warning as if we couldn't figure it out on our own. But anyway, okay? So it's what is it about that? And this is what I do when I coach, okay? Because I say, it'll say, the takeoff, I just hate it, okay? But you got to be more specific, okay?
It's like an anxiety feeling.
Okay. Does it feel out of control?
Kind of, yeah.
Okay.
And after that, it's done. If I just could get over that, I can fly.
And that's a good point because the first 2 minutes of takeoff, if you can manage your anxiety for the first 2 minutes, it's usually 90% of the work is done for people. All you got to do is cope with a little bit of turbulence down the road. 1 second, I'm going to get him to make.
Similarly, it's feeling that choppiness when you're taking off sometimes.
Okay, now choppiness.
Anticipating it, I think.
Okay, choppiness would be because the air is a little turbulent that we're taking off into. Okay, so that would be a mixture of the two. Yeah.
I always fear that it's going to tilt up too much and that the tail is going to get clipped.
Going to drag.
away.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a real dilemma, and we haven't talked about the MAX tonight, but one of the things that has happened to not only the Boeing 737 as they've added different models, but also to the Airbus, is what they found out is, and the certification process is, I'm getting ahead of myself, but the certification process is what's going to be the biggest challenge for Boeing. And I don't mean challenge in that they won't get past it. I mean challenge in that they're going to have some real tough questions asked about that. But what's happened to airplanes is they took an airplane that was really, really a good airplane, a bestseller and a real good performer like the 737. I've flown the 737 for 27 years. It's like you can't believe how routine it gets. And that's a challenge for a pilot because when it gets so routine, now it's hard for me to stay interested in something that's no longer interesting, right? Because nothing goes wrong. But what they did was they said, how about if we just add 10 feet in the fuselage, make it a little longer, we can put some more seats in there, okay? And then when they went to do that, they said, hey, you know what, we just need another 6 feet on the wingtips, a little longer wing there. And then they said, oh, now we got to add a little bit of bigger engine on it, or tweak the engine so we get more thrust. And that's what happened all along until we hit what I would call the tipping point with the 737 MAX. That's really what happened. And it had to do because when they got to that model, they had the engines mounted below, and it caused a pitch-up problem, which is not a big deal, but they came in with a stability augmentation system, which we do with automation, and that's what caused the problem. That it wasn't operating correctly, and the pilots weren't fully educated, and we're going to see some more about that. Anyway. Yeah, that's well. Yeah, it's all. Well, one thing, it's unprecedented. They grounded the entire fleet of MAX 8s and 9s. Okay, so that's one thing, and it is happening right now. They have changed the software system, but Boeing, you can imagine, it's not. They don't want anything else to happen because that's not good for business. Killing people is not good for business, but having an airplane that's the people have lost confidence. Remember the trust thing. You lose trust in the public, doesn't matter. People will quit flying you, okay? So, anybody else on takeoff? Yeah.
So my mom used to be a flight attendant, and she always told me, don't worry about turbulence, you're going to crash, either takeoff or landing. So...
And she thought she was helping.
Yeah. And now that I'm watching all these YouTube things, it's always takeoff. And it's
Right,
like,
right. So anybody who's married to, or anybody who grew up around a pilot or a flight attendant, you know too much. You're probably beyond help. No, really not. So that is a good point, though, is that, in your mind, she thought she was helping. Don't worry about that. And all she did was plant a huge seed there, okay? And what she's saying, there's some truth in it, in that about a third of the accidents happen on takeoff, a third happen on landing. But they don't happen because they're particularly dangerous maneuvers. They happen because that's the greatest change in the energy in the airplane, right? When I take off, I have to go from 0 speed to a safe flying speed, which is the minimum stall speed, plus a 30% margin to get in the air. So if anything interferes with that process down there, now it may extend the takeoff roll. It may cause me to want to stop, and then I've got to worry about stopping in the runway. And then in landing, it's the reverse, right? Now I've got a lot of energy that I'm flying the airplane. Now I've got to get rid of all that by the time I get to the end of the runway. Okay? So that's why if something goes wrong during the flight, you're more vulnerable, and that's the word that I choose to use, vulnerable. You're not at greater risk per se, and because one of the things we do is we analyze that. The amount of computation and preparation that goes into preparing an airplane for takeoff is probably 50% of what goes on in that flight. We make sure that we know how much it weighs, we know how much energy we've got, we know how long the runway is, we know what it takes to get airborne, we know what it takes to stop, and all that goes into every takeoff. We know exactly what we weigh, and we can pre-compute all those figures, and we practice that all the time in the simulator. We practice things in the simulator that you'll never see in flight in your career typically, because the airplanes are just so reliable. And then when something like the MAX comes around, it's really sad because it really does. It's a big, literally a splash in terms of events, and it garners everybody's attention and gets you amped up. And that little voice in there says, "See, I told you." But really, the most dangerous thing that you'll do today is to drive home from the airport tonight, statistically. And hard to believe, but it's true. Yeah.
Didn't have many triggers at all.
What's that?
He didn't have many.
Oh,
triggers
okay.
at all.
Yeah, cool. All right.
Almost.
Are you done yet?
No.
Gee, for
We're
Christmas.
feeling, all right. So, if you want to hit something, talk about the confined spaces and taking off the air machine into the air.
Okay.
Those are our biggest group so far, and the weird sounds, which makes sense because they don't get on the airplane, then the sounds are weird anyway.
Yeah.
So those are the three big ones.
So Eric just pointed out, takeoff is one of the biggest ones. Turbulence is the other one. Those are the two main ones. And landing, if anybody's afraid of landing, it's usually an aborted landing approach and then taking off. Anybody have put landing down? What was the issue for landing in here?
We were coming in, trying to think, we were coming out of Chicago, I think landing here.
Okay.
And he just was pulling in, he was set the landing gear down and coming in, and he said, "Whoops," and he said that, he said, "Whoops," he said that happens every once in a while, and he pulled it back up, and got to go around, and I guess there was something in the way now.
The only thing, worst time to hear whoops would be from your surgeon, right? Whoops. Okay, so that's really what the issue is. Now, when that happened to you, you had expectations of landing.
No.
Right? So anytime you show me a person with unmet expectations, I'll show you a person who's disappointed. All right? So that's the big thing about landing. The thing about it in terms of the energy management, all that, unlike a takeoff where we're starting with zero airspeed, a landing, we're already flying, so it's not an issue. Matter of fact, it's kind of hard to keep the airplane bridled back so it doesn't go too fast and overspeed the gear or something on that. And admit it, you got 15 more free minutes on the airplane for your buck, Yeah. That's another trip at Disney World. Yeah. And extra miles. Yeah. Unfortunately, they don't do it that way, but yeah.
Ask a quick question.
Yeah.
I mean, it's related to everything, but everybody, we're always told when we're on a plane and we're scared, just look at the faces around you, look at the flight attendants.
Who says that?
I don't know, everyone.
Everyone,
How
yeah.
to get through a
Yeah.
flight, but why, if 1 in 6 of us is scared of flying more like 1 in 3, don't they teach the pilots a little bit of rapport and bedside manner? Very good. I know you guys are busy, but a lot of times you're like, oh, just
Okay.
basically